Welcome to Mystery and Murder Analysis by Dr. Phil, where we don't just ask what happened, we ask why. What makes a family legacy crumble? And what darkness can fester within a dynasty once thought of as untouchable? Today, we'll start to explore the twisted saga of the Murdaugh family, a name that once carried a significant prestige and weight in South Carolina's Lowcountry. But behind the polished facade of Southern tradition, a web of secrets, corruption, and tragedy would soon surface. Alcohol abuse, anger, tragic drowning, financial fraud, a double homicide, a suicide attempt. This was all part of the Murdaugh tale. The whole thing is almost impossible to believe. What on earth could lead to a father being accused of murdering his own wife and son, his very flesh and blood? It goes against the very basics of human nature. But this isn't just a story about murder and scandal. It's a story decades in the making about toxic privilege, deceit, and betrayal. This is the Murdaugh's family story. Now, you probably know a lot about what presumably happened, but there's a lot you don't know. And more importantly, why it happened. Look, I've probably read everything you've read, looked at everything you've looked at. I've done a series of shows about this myself, but I kept being haunted by the why. Why in the world did this happen? The surface answers are real easy. He was in financial trouble. He wanted insurance money. He was panicked. He didn't know what to do. But let me tell you, a lot of people get in financial trouble. A lot of people panic. A lot of people don't know what to do. And they don't take a gun, a shotgun, and blow off the heads of their wife and their son. So the answers to why have to run a whole lot deeper. This is a whole level of pathology. This is a whole level of evil that just can't be explained by the common stresses, the problems that you face in even a twisted tale that you hear about in this kind of a story. This is the Murdaugh's family story. Look, the Murdaughs, they weren't just known in South Carolina's Lowcountry, they ran the place. What is the Lowcountry? It's just how they describe a part of that state. It was based in Hampton County, and there were 3 generations of Murdaugh men that held the office of solicitor, the region's top prosecutor for over 85 years. Think about it. That's almost a century of power, all held by one bloodline. Courtrooms, law enforcement, politics, you name it. Chances are the Murdaughs had their hands in it. In fact, the Murdaughs were so revered that a portrait of Alex's grandfather even hung in the local county courthouse. Now, at the center of the modern-day Murdaugh storm is patriarch Richard Alexander, Alex for short, a 4th-generation lawyer and once prominent figure in the family's influential personal injury law firm. So let's break down the present-day family tree a bit. There was Alex's wife, Maggie, who was known for her grace in social circles. Alex and Maggie met back when they were students at the University of South Carolina. They married in 1993, staying together for nearly 30 years. And together they raised 2 sons, Richard Alexander Jr., whom everyone called by his nickname Buster, and their younger son, Paul. Now, from the outside looking in, they were a happy family. Photos captured the Murdaughs at upscale social events, the men dressed in tuxedos, Maggie draped in fur. Other pictures showed them smiling while clad in camouflage and posing in coordinated, preppy button-downs. They seemed to cherish family traditions and the image of togetherness. The three Murdaugh men all shared the same striking red hair, making them an unmistakable trio. Those who knew the Murdaughs and knew them well describe Alex as a doting father who would do anything for his sons. But behind the grand homes, the hunting lodges, and the society events, a much darker truth was brewing. One that would eventually shatter everything the Murdaugh name once stood for. The family's unraveling began with the youngest son, Paul. By the time he was a teenager, Paul would become known as a charming, fun-loving young man who had many friends and a close relationship with his grandparents. However, he also allegedly possessed a more sinister side. Known among friends for partying hard and throwing his family's name around when he got into trouble, Paul had a reputation for reckless behavior, and alcohol was often involved in his shenanigans. Those who knew him said it wasn't uncommon for Paul to drink heavily, sometimes even using his grandfather's ID to buy booze before he was legal. Not his father's, his grandfather's. That tells you how much they had to overlook the legality of him buying it. He was bringing in his grandfather's ID. It's a little hard to confuse that. He exhibited such a split personality when he was drunk versus sober that those closest to him even gave his intoxicated, belligerent self a nickname. They called him Timmy when he began drunkenly acting out. It was as if blaming his bad behavior on his alter ego made it easier to excuse. Now, Paul started dating a young blonde named Morgan Doty in high school, and they seemed like a well-suited couple who were crazy about each other. But according to Morgan, this young love story was no fairy tale, because later Morgan would describe it as a tumultuous relationship plagued by verbal assaults and physical abuse, which were allegedly fueled by Paul's constant and out-of-control drinking. She claims that during the course of their relationship, he kicked her, punched her, and held her by the throat. Recounting one chilling night in a hotel after his brother Buster's graduation party, where she says Paul became violent and out of control during one of their fights. Coming up, he's alcohol-fueled, he shows aggression, lack of impulse control, and this is not on occasion. This is a pattern. Homeowners, when's the last time you checked on your home title? If your answer is never, then this is for you. Scammers are stealing titles and your equity is the target. Criminals forge your signature, and just like that, your home title can be transferred out of your name. That's why I partnered with Home Title Lock, so you can find out today if you're already a victim. Use my promo code Phil at HometitleLock.com and you'll get a free title history report. Plus, you'll get a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud does happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. That's HometitleLock.com, promo code Phil. I want to talk some about teen drinking and violence in relationships, especially when you mix it with an air of entitlement and unaccountability. I've talked at length about warning signs that your child is having trouble with this sort of thing, especially when it comes to a teen showing extreme mood swings. Maybe they're withdrawing from others or showing other signs of substance abuse. Of course, as a parent, there's no way you can control everything your child does once they walk out that door, and they're not going to do these behaviors right under your nose. But unchecked, rampant alcohol consumption, you just can't let that slide, and you can't turn a blind eye to it. Now, as I said, they're not going to do it under your nose, but you got to have your head buried in the sand if you've got a teenager that's getting blackout drunk, changing their behavior to the point that even their friends are concerned about being around them. Teen girls in abusive relationships often report that alcohol intensifies their partner's controlling or threatening behavior. And at first, they'll often report that, hey, listen, I was flattered that my boyfriend was so in love with me that he was controlling and wanted to know everything about where I was and what I was doing and who I was with and who I was talking to and all that. But pretty soon that gets old and it's not so loving and lovable. And then you pour alcohol on top of that and an entitled attitude that he gets everything he wants, when he wants it, where he wants it, how he wants it. And you've got a situation that can get way out of control. Teen drinking often goes hand in hand with drug abuse, unprotected sex, physical altercations, and driving under the influence. In another disturbing account, Morgan describes Paul's alarming behavior after a Christmas party where she claimed that despite being heavily intoxicated, he still insisted on taking over the wheel and driving his truck home that night. Surprise, surprise, he lost control of the vehicle, causing it to land on its side in a ditch. Only by a stroke of luck were the two unharmed. And she says she tried to call 911, but Paul snatched her phone away and instead called his family. By the way, interfering with a 911 call can be a crime in and of itself. Soon after, Paul's parents and grandfather arrived on the scene, and Morgan claimed they rushed over to clean up Paul's incriminating evidence, swiftly removing all evidence of drinking, open containers of alcohol, firearms before the police could arrive. And according to Morgan, this wasn't a case of his parents turning a blind eye. She said Alex and Maggie not only knew of Paul's excessive drinking, underage by the way, they enabled it. They knew that he often used his older brother Buster's ID to get alcohol, and he would also sometimes use their credit cards to purchase the booze. So they had evidence right on their credit card statements. Now, later on in court, Morgan would provide video evidence showing Paul's drinking excessively with his family right there, watching it happen. She alleged that Paul drank almost daily and usually to the point of gross intoxication. So let's just step back and take a look at what we're describing here, because it gives you a profile of the family dynamic that's going on. His behavior patterns and warning signs were glaring. These are going off like fireworks on the 4th of July. He's alcohol fueled. He shows aggression, lack of impulse control, and this is not on occasion. This is a pattern. It's frequent alcohol abuse, which is known to impair judgment, reduce inhibitions, and increase aggression. And his parents knew this. As I said, they witnessed this. When alcohol becomes tied to a person's identity, of course it can act as a gateway to moral disengagement, where you give yourself permission to drink, and then when you drink, this acts as a disinhibition agent. So it stops you from being inhibited and spins your moral compass where you don't react to normal right and wrong. Paul's alleged abuse of his girlfriend Morgan, while under the influence, suggests more than just a drinking problem. It points to a pattern of using alcohol as a misguided form of release. Maybe it's for his anger, maybe it's his need to dominate, maybe he feels overshadowed by his older brother or his father or whatever. But his reported actions following this 2017 truck crash, taking away Morgan's phone, calling for his family, clearly indicates he knew they would cover up for him. This is a deep-rooted belief that problems could be erased just by calling Daddy. Daddy's the power in the county. Daddy's the prosecutor. Daddy's the one that'll just sweep all this under the rug and not even talk about it the next day. He had learned from his elders that because of their family status, they were above the law. They were allowed to live by a different set of rules. And Paul's alleged violent outburst, especially during private, emotionally charged moments, signal something deeper going on. The most powerful role model in any child's life is the same-sex parent. That's the role model. That's who sets the standard. I submit that that's evidence of what the dynamic was in that family. And clearly, Paul had a dual identity. He presented himself as charismatic and outgoing. But those who really knew him knew there was a Jekyll-Hyde situation going on. And those that were around him the most tell a very different story. He wasn't charismatic. He wasn't Mr. Gregarious. It was a Jekyll-Hyde situation, and a dangerous path was being traveled, and it was being traveled without intervention, without accountability. His behavior was spiraling out of control. And when these teenagers don't have clear boundaries, it can result in relational trauma. So from the outside looking in, perhaps it seemed like Paul had a cool dad. This is where we go to party. We just know that he's going to be okay. Let him off the hook. Wrecks his truck. There was no evidence that there was any kind of accountability. Seemed like he was just letting him be a cool kid, drink, party. But really, it was setting him up to fail. He was modeling behavior, taking away any kind of boundaries that clearly he needed. Time and time again, Paul was getting away with things without so much as a slap on the wrist. And it seemed to be emboldening him because the worst was yet to come. On the night of February 23rd, 2019, Paul and 5 of his friends, including his girlfriend Morgan, who just kept hanging in there, boarded the Murdaugh's family boat. After a night of drinking, heading out into the dark waters of Archer's Creek, surveillance footage showed Paul staggering, blatantly drunk. Now, think about this. If anywhere along the way, his parents, his father, had put up a stop sign, had held him accountable, had in any way said, this behavior is not okay and you will not behave this way, this night might not have happened. But none of those stop signs were there. None of that accountability was there. None of that parenting took place. So a drunken Paul is seen staggering onto this boat, slurring his words, belligerent. He was insistent on driving the boat, which seemed to be a pattern because we already know that he insisted on driving the truck that he ran off in the ditch and put on its side that could have killed them both. And later, police reports revealed that Paul was indeed severely intoxicated at the time with a blood alcohol level of, wait for it, 0.286. That's more than 3 times the legal limit for operating a vehicle. 3 times. Now, to hear Paul's surviving friends tell it, this was a boat ride from hell. Wasted and out of control, Paul was allegedly driving this boat recklessly, zigzagging and speeding through the water. Don't forget, it's pitch black out. He was reportedly arguing with Morgan, shouting at her, and at one point even slapped her. Paul's friends, the other passengers, were panicked, yelling at him to stop, pleading with him to let someone else drive. Witnesses later recalled the boat's lights were off, leaving them nearly blind in the dark waters near the bridge. At around 2:20 a.m., the boat collided with a bridge piling, and they were at high speed. Morgan, along with friends Connor Cook and Miley Ullman, suffered injuries in the crash, while the impact hurled Paul, Mallory Beach, and her boyfriend Anthony Cook into the water. Paul and Anthony resurfaced. Mallory Beach, nowhere to be found. Panic immediately set in. Take a listen to some of the dash cam audio from when investigators first arrived on the scene.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Sure? I think we still get you checked out, right?
Yeah, I'm fine. I mean, shit, what's going on?
Hey, what's your last name, buddy?
Murdaugh.
M-U-R-D-A-U-G-H. Okay, what's your first name?
Paul.
Paul, P-A-U-L?
Holy shit.
Yeah.
But they found Mallory. Hey.
We're looking right now for it. They're down there looking, okay?
But they got a good search on her, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But they probably gonna find her either.
They're gonna find her, okay?
Don't you think?
They're down there looking right now, okay?
You know they got a... That's a good search, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they got a good team down there looking for her, okay?
Hey, can I use your phone?
I don't have my phone on me, buddy.
Here.
Hey, here, stay right here. I'm gonna go get that one you dropped on the ground back there, all right?
Yes, sir.
Pick that up. You got it already? Yeah. Okay. So there were 6 total people in the boat. Okay. They hit, I think, one of the bridge pile, and where you see the boat is where it ended up.
Okay.
One of the young ladies got ejected. She still has not been found. Tide's going out, and we tried walking down the marsh for a little ways to find her. But the young lady down there, I think, is the most severe so far of the people that we have, the 5 that we have.
Okay. So we got 6 total, 5 accounted for.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Tide's going out, and they were running this way when they hit the bridge, so she probably got ejected, and the current carried her down that way.
I did find a county out of Hampton, a deal out of Hampton County for that.
No, you can just sit right here. I'm not closing the door. I'm gonna get you a cigarette. Sit right there. Sit right here. You got everybody coming out here. You're my concern, okay?
I'm fine.
No, you're not. Listen, Pete. I'm here for you. All right. Me and you, we're chilling. I understand you're upset. I ain't about to sit here and tell you to calm down, okay? But I'm gonna get you a cigarette.
I'm working.
Fire, they can bring their thermal up.
Mom, y'all need to come to me for quick. We hit a bridge in the boat. Connor's fucked up. Connor's messed up bad. We can't find Mallory. Morgan's messed up bad. We can't find Mallory, Mom. I don't know, Mom. There's 50 cops out here. Everybody shit up. I said there's 50 cops out here. And one of the cops was nice enough to let me call you. Mom, there's 50 cops here. Coast Guard, everything. We can't find Mallory. It's been 30 minutes, Mom. You probably need to call Mr. May or Mr. Phillip.
Hey, one's injured on the boat all the way down there. I don't know if EMS knows all that, but
So we're doing on loading now. They're giving an ETA of 20 minutes.
Hello? He told me you're in law enforcement? Okay. Alright, yes, man. We're here. Like I said, I'll let you come see your son soon as you get here. I got him pretty much as calm as I can get him. You know, I totally understand. So, me and him, I'll be hanging out with him the entire time, okay? Just Google Paris Island. Yeah, just Google Paris Island, the main entrance gate. We're around the main road. It's one way in, one way out. You will not miss us. We're on the main road. You won't miss us.
Get that motherfucker right there away from me.
What rig you on with?
He ain't gonna get no fucking trouble.
Oh, yes.
Bro, you fucking smiling like it's fucking funny.
Sit down. Sit down.
My fucking girlfriend's gone, bro.
Sit down.
You think it's fucking funny?
Sit down. Sit down.
Hope you rot fucking hell.
Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. If somebody put him in the car, the one with the towel.
Go ahead.
Where's your cigarette at? The driver, how much has he had to drink tonight?
Dude, I can tell you this much. We left, I don't even know where the fuck we were. We left and stopped fucking downtown Buford. And me and him about fought on the fucking dock because I told him not to go up there to that fucking bar that we needed to be going home.
Downtown? How are y'all drinking down there and none of y'all
Hell,
took
I
it?
wasn't. I stayed on the damn boat.
But he was drinking actually at the bar?
I reckon. I didn't go up there.
So y'all came from downtown through the creek, and that's when he was going way too fast?
So I don't even know. I finally got to the point I grabbed my girlfriend and put her in my lap in the bottom of the boat and was holding on with my eyes closed. The next thing I know, I'm in the fucking water. Is there anybody in the water looking for us?
Yes, we got MRO, we got DNR, fire department's got their boats in the water. Coast Guard is on the way with the chopper, and DNR's en route.
Y'all know Alec Murdaugh?
Oh yeah, I know that name.
That's his son.
That
So
driving the boat?
good luck. To be honest with you,
Alpha 29.
The one you were getting mad at back there, he was in his drawers.
he was the last one driving whenever I got down in the floor of the boat and held on my
Boxers.
girlfriend. Yes, sir.
Over.
Let me know if you need another cigarette, alright, Bubba?
This is my dude with the busted mouth eye.
He's still got clothes on, correct?
Yeah.
Alright, that's what, yeah. They're good. Everybody's good physical wise.
That's my first cut.
Okay, but I just wanted, we need to know exactly who was driving, and you said that was the last one you saw, so that's what I told them, because his ass will be responsible, okay? You hear me? Don't worry about that. We're going to handle on that end, okay?
Hey, I'm with Department of Natural Resources. Who was driving the boat?
Right, Alpha 67.
The last time I grabbed my girlfriend and got down in the bottom of the boat, Paul was driving.
Paul was driving?
Yes. I begged and begged and begged and begged to let me
Stand by 1
drive.
second.
Uh-huh.
If Connor was driving,
Alpha
it happened
7,
after I had done flipped the
Battalion
fuck
1
out and laid
with
down
the
in
fire
the bottom
department
of
is
the
looking
boat.
for DNR.
And
They
what
were both sitting on
you
the
were-
front seat.
You were laying in the front
In the bottom, no, the back of the bottom of the boat.
before you hit.
Yes.
Okay, and Paul and Connor were sitting on right
On
behind the
captain's
console.
seat,
Yeah.
I can get a
Okay,
better
I
location
had
from
done
that.
fought with both of them for 30 minutes about letting me drive, and both of them thought it was fucking funny.
Yeah. Okay.
Paul is incredibly drunk at this point, so he's not in possession of his faculties and doesn't get what's happened. But his friend Anthony Cook is absolutely outraged that he doesn't seem to get the fact that Anthony's girlfriend, Mallory Beach, has disappeared after he drove the boat drunk. He yells at him, "You MF, you're smiling," and told him to rot in hell. So at this point, it's kind of like, look, this is over. The entitlement's over. The fun and games is over. And remember, the reports are they're begging him to let somebody else drive. This is no longer fun and games. This is no longer fun and games. This isn't them all out, hey, having a good time on a boat. They're all scared to death for their lives at this point. This is not Paul driving the boat. This is Timmy. This is the crazy guy driving the boat. And his demeanor during the police interaction, he's clearly drunk. He's wearing only boxers. He was more concerned about getting in touch with his grandfather than the missing girl. So at this point, you're starting to see some things that we're going to see later concerning his father. That's why we're spending time talking about Paul here. I know that this trial is about Alex, but why are we talking about Paul? We're talking about Paul because there's a family dynamic going on here. And if you want to talk about why, you have to look at everything that's surrounding this. I said, you know a lot about what presumably happened, but do you really know why? Do you know what's going on here? When you have generations of entitlement, honest to God, these people have a whole different way of seeing the world. One of the characteristics of narcissism is that people see things from their point of view. If you don't have a narcissistic personality, it's hard to understand that narcissists only see things from their perspective. They only see things through their point of view. They don't have the ability for empathy. Now, empathy is the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and experience, connect to, understand what they're going through. If someone is experiencing pain or loss or confusion or whatever, someone with empathy has the ability to relate to that and understand what they're going through. Narcissists don't even try. There's only one perspective, it's theirs. So at this point, Paul, who I submit to you has a narcissistic personality, I haven't evaluated him. I'm just telling you, if I did, this would be on my short list of considerations. And he comes by it honestly, because I believe it's one of the defining characteristics of this dynasty, of this family. They look at things like, how does this impact me? That's what I care about. One of the things psychology does is it endeavors to categorize things into neat segments, to pigeonhole things. And why? It's forced on the field of psychology, just like it is on medicine, by insurance. Because if you're going to submit a claim, you got to put down a diagnosis. So you have to differentiate. A physician has to say, well, this is a kidney infection, or this is a sore throat, or this is a broken arm. They have to put something down so they can submit a claim in order to get paid. If they just put down a general description of what's going on, there's not a category for general description of what's going on. The same thing with psychology. You have to put down a diagnosis. This is a neurosis. Well, what kind of neurosis? This is psychosis. What kind of psychosis? I wrote a book not long ago called Life Code, and I said, I'm going to throw off this tendency to pigeonhole everything, because I don't think that's the way people live. You have to look at the blend of these things, because they don't pigeonhole well. You have to blend some of these things to really capture the personality that you're dealing with. There is a blend. And one of the blends that I think is going on here is something called the dark triad, which is narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. Let me talk about these things because they occur at a subclinical level, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. But these three things in combination can be really bad, depending on some other characteristics. But like grandiosity, pride, egotism, a lack of empathy, these are things that characterize narcissism. Think about Paul here. He is grandiose. He makes up his own rules. He rolls a truck over, no big deal, just call the house. They'll come fix this. He's drunk. He wants booze. He takes his grandfather's ID and walks in and just expects that there might be a 40-year age gap between his age and the ID he's got. Hey, that's all right. Don't worry about it. I'm a Murdaugh. It's okay. He's entitled. He's grandiose. He expects it to be okay. Psychopathy, antisocial behavior, impulsivity, selfishness, callousness, lack of emotion, remorselessness. And then Machiavellianism, manipulative, indifference to morality, no empathy, calculated focus on self-interest. But these things overlap. This was a concept that was developed back in 2002 by Delroy Paulhus and Kevin Williams, these Canadian psychologists. And there's actually a test for this if you want to know if there's somebody in your family, or maybe you think you yourself are guilty of it. There was a test put together by Richard Christie and Florence Geis. It's 20 items on this test. And if you score high, you're likely to have high levels of deceitfulness, exploitiveness, be cold, and unemotional. It's called the Mach 4 test. We'll put a link to it in case you want to know if you're so afflicted or somebody in your family is. But I think that's what's going on in this family. I think these people are afflicted and live within this dark triad, which can really lead to evil behaviors. That's what's going on here. He's not concerned about his friend, quote, friend, or the fact that his friend's girlfriend, the love of his life, is missing in the dark waters of this creek at night. He's not thinking, oh my God, I've killed somebody. He could care less. He's wanting to get a hold of his family so they can get over there and fix everything for him. That's what he's concerned about. Now, where does he get this behavior? The most powerful role model in anyone's family, in anyone's life, is a same-sex parent. That's Alex, the father. What has he role modeled? What has he reinforced with this kid? He kept demanding a phone so he could contact his grandfather, Randolph. And following the crash, Anthony Cook informed deputies that Paul Murdaugh was behind the wheel when he said, you know, Alex Murdaugh, that's his son. Good luck, was the comment that emphasized what they all knew. The weight of the Murdaugh name carried in Lowcountry's justice system. So there were signs of a cover-up right there on the bank. And it's interesting to note, despite Cook immediately naming Paul as the driver of the boat, initial police reports failed to even reflect that. So that raised early concerns about interference. Chaos followed. Paul was not helpful at all when it came to first responders. In fact, he was rather combative and disruptive. He was never given a breathalyzer at the scene. His friend, Cook, was saying he's drunk, he's driving the boat. He was out of control. He was never given a breathalyzer. By the time the first Department of Natural Resources officer arrived, Paul had already been taken to the hospital, eliminating any chance to conduct a field sobriety test. In the hospital, Paul's blood was drawn for medical reasons, prompted by his erratic behavior and possible injuries. Now later, investigators secured a warrant to access his medical records. That's when they uncovered his dangerously high blood alcohol level. Remember, it was 3 times normal. This is a time where you can actually stop breathing, it's so high. Your motor skills, your reflexes, your reasoning are so impaired, you can barely walk, let alone drive a boat at high speed at night with poor visibility towards a bridge abutment. Meanwhile, according to hospital records and eyewitness accounts, Alex Murdaugh showed up almost immediately, and he got to work to make sure that he had control of the narrative, just as he always does. So, what did he do in the wake of the accident? Well, he's talking to survivors. He moved between hospital rooms, speaking with the teens involved. Now, according to witnesses, he repeatedly urged Connor Cook to keep quiet about who was driving the boat, telling him everything's going to be all right. Just say you don't know who was driving. I've got you. Now, Paul and Connor had both taken turns driving the boat. But again, according to numerous witnesses, it was Paul who was behind the wheel when the boat slammed into the bridge. Alec recommended that Connor hire an attorney named Corey Fleming to represent him, without disclosing that Fleming was not only a longtime friend, but also Paul's godfather. Talk about a conflict of interest. So here you are at a hospital with a kid who's in shock. His girlfriend is missing, presumably dead. And here comes power figure Alex. Says, hey, I got you. I know you were driving, but listen, don't worry about it. I got you. Hire this lawyer. We'll take care of this. We got you covered. Hospital staff was so troubled by his meddling behavior that they asked him to stop interfering with the other patients and return to Paul's room. Some claimed that Alex flashed his solicitor's badge at the hospital to exert influence. Now, you talk about narcissism, entitlement, a lack of boundaries, privilege, zero moral compass. There aren't enough adjectives to talk about the abuse of the system here. This is witness tampering, obstruction of justice. There's not enough time to go through what you could allege here. Now, regarding Alex's behavior, criminals themselves, as the center of the universe, often feel wronged by others when events don't go their way. They think the system is failing them, the system is out to get them, and so they just try to hijack the narrative because they think they're entitled. They think, okay, we got to fix this before they get us. Now keep in mind, while Alex Murdaugh is working like a dog behind the scenes on his drunk son's behalf, Mallory Beach is still gone. She's lost out there in the water in the pitch black. But was Alex using his influence to call in EMTs, to call in search teams, to do anything he could? No. He was not demonstrating concern for her or for her parents, who were at this point in the throes of despair and fear. Instead, he's focused yet again on pressuring and bamboozling others to keep his son out of trouble. There's a term in trauma psychology called betrayal blindness, which describes how communities and institutions often ignore or suppress wrongdoing to preserve cherished relationships or reputations. The perks, the functional blindness, the quote, look the other way mentality when it came to the Murdaughs was a very real thing. Now think about this. Think about it from her parents' standpoint. For 8 agonizing days, search crews combed the marshes, dragging the riverbed, scanning the surface from boats and helicopters, desperately looking for any trace of this 19-year-old. Her family stood on the shoreline praying for a miracle. Her best friend sobbing, describing the last time she saw Mallory, launched into the darkness after the boat slammed into that bridge piling. Finally, on March 3rd of 2019, Mallory's body was found 5 miles downriver. It was caught in a marshy inlet. She had been in the water for 7 long days and nights. Her family destroyed. No words to describe their pain. Just the unbearable weight of knowing their daughter wasn't coming home. And you can imagine how that body looked after spending all of those days and nights decomposing in that water. Animals, fish, all the things that contributed to her decomposition. According to those who knew her best, Mallory was a bubbly, positive young woman who had so many friends. She loved fashion. She worked in a local boutique. She aspired to do home renovation projects and real estate. Hers was a life cut short, and in such a preventable way. If only Paul had not insisted on driving that boat. If only Paul's father had been a father. You know, parent is both a noun and a verb. You are a father, but then you must father. He didn't do that. Mallory's family hoped that justice would soon follow. It wouldn't bring her back, but at least someone would be held accountable. But in the shadow of the Murdaugh name, even hope felt like a very fragile, elusive thing. It took nearly 2 months for Paul to face charges in the deadly boat crash, a delay that only deepened public suspicion. The reasons remain unclear, but many believe it was due to a mix of conflicting accounts over who was driving. Remember, Alex tried to pin it on Connor Cook, and the involvement of law enforcement officers with personal ties to the Murdaugh family. It wasn't until April 2019 that Paul was finally charged with 3 felonies: boating under the influence, causing death, and 2 counts of boating under the influence causing great bodily injury. But the handling of these judgments drew public backlash. There were no handcuffs, no jail booking, no mugshots. Instead, Paul was issued a summons, a piece of paper, to appear in court. He wasn't arrested. Nobody cuffed him, took him in. You just given a ticket to appear in court. He pleaded not guilty and was released on $50,000 personal recognizance bond. Now, that meant nothing. Now, this is highly unusual, and it reeks of the Murdaughs currying favor. Keep in mind, a young woman died. A young woman was killed. The fact that this occurred on water instead of pavement is of no consequence. You're operating a vehicle under the influence, 3 times the legal limit. The fact that it's water instead of the road, no difference. There was clear evidence at the time of the crash that Paul was intoxicated. How many other would-be felons do you know who would get to basically skip out of court whistling Dixie when they're faced with such heinous charges? Of course, Paul lawyered up with none other than Dick Harpootlian, one of the most powerful defense attorneys in South Carolina. He's the real deal. State senator known for his aggressive courtroom style and decades-long legal career, including major prosecutions and defense cases. Also part of Murdaugh's defense team was attorney Jim Griffin. The family had the resources to hire Harpootlian, and Paul certainly needed his expertise. He may have been treated with kid gloves up until this point, but the charges he faced carried real consequences, and he was staring down serious prison time. Now, it's hard to get someone with a generational legacy like the Murdaughs into a courtroom facing charges, but once you do, there can be a lot of resentment, and a jury is just apt to slap them pretty hard because they put up with a lot, and they can go in there anonymously and vote, and they could tag them pretty hard. But the court dates just kept getting pushed. Delays piled up. Now, in the meantime, you might think that this young woman's death and these grave charges might have served as an earth-shattering wake-up call and a rock-bottom moment for Paul. Yeah, well, think again. He did not appear to cease drinking or partying. In late May of 2021, Paul was stopped by law enforcement while preparing to host a boat party. That's right, a boat party involving alcohol. Officers with the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources intervened before the group could launch, finding a cooler stocked with booze. Once again, who shows up? Well, Alex, Daddy. Big Daddy reportedly stepped in and no charges were brought. Now think about that. You got this young man who is facing charges concerning the death of a young woman from operating a boat drunk. And here he is getting ready to operate a boat drunk. And he's getting ready to get arrested. But Daddy steps in and no charges were brought. Still, a trial loomed, but as fate would have it, Paul would never get his day in court because he would soon no longer be alive. June 7th, 2021, the day that everything changed for the Murdaughs. That night, Paul and his mother Maggie were found shot to death near the dog kennels on the family's sprawling country property. It appeared to be a brutal, calculated ambush and the beginning of a twisted story no one saw coming. The allegations? Daddy showed up again. On our next episode, we'll uncover the shocking twist behind one of the South's most infamous murder cases. A mother and son gunned down on their own land. A once respected family name now scandalized in a way that could not be cleaned up. And when suspicion turns to family patriarch Alec Murdaugh, the headlines erupt. But the twist and secrets that would soon unravel are more jaw-dropping than the wildest movie script you could imagine. And we're going to break it all down. Every betrayal, every lie, and all of the why, along with what it reveals about the psychological makeup of this powerful Southern family that would soon fall. I look forward to taking this journey with you because it is very revealing. Thank you for listening. Be sure to follow and subscribe to Mystery and Murder Analysis by Dr. Phil. And tell everybody you know, because we do this every single week. And it's available on all podcast players and on YouTube. See you next time. I want to thank overemployed.com for allowing us to use excerpts from the material on their website.